Okay, good evening, everyone. A little after 6 p.m. on this Monday. We'll go ahead and get started. See if we have any questions on anything. Well, let's see if I have a question first, because I have a question. If not, you guys have anything? Um, I want to pick up off Rainia's question from yesterday. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor. Are you muted?
You,
Okay.
I want to talk about who we are. Not just necessarily now, but before we get off, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Um, I want to read something. I want to read Psalm 82, and I want to read it from the excuse me, first from the American Standard, then from the Message Bible, okay? And let's talk about this for a minute. Rainey asked a question by the way about
You're freezing up,
Elohim.
You're
I
freezing.
am
Yes. Do it again.
okay. Am I okay now?
Yes, you are.
I'm sorry. I don't know what else to do here. I might have to go to my phone, okay?
No, you good.
Okay.
Good.
Uh, but I thought her question was interesting, and I don't think we still have clarity. I spoke with someone yesterday afternoon, and we discussed it as well. So, in the height of where we are right now, I think it is extremely important that we know who we are and feel comfortable with that. So, and I'm talking to me as well, okay? So,
Ron, can you
yes, yes, ma'am.
can you restate her question?
God, well, what she was asking was, if we desire one thing and we are Elohim, and we desire, like, for example, the election, we desired Kamala to win, and she didn't. Uh, and so we're talking about we being Elohim, but the Father, God, or the Creator, rather, uh, desired something else. So it seemed, and that was sort of a little, I won't say confusing, but it was something we need to look at and
Uh,
so we can understand. Was that her question, guys, or did I mess?
she was saying, if we are God, then who is it that made the decision for her to win? Basically, is what she was saying. Because
Okay,
if we are God, is it not us who did that? Or is it someone else or something else?
something else, yeah.
So, um, go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So what I was looking at, and please, anyone, if you have questions or comments, or you see a better way to get an answer from this, for this rather, please let me know. But I like Psalm 82. I went there because that's where it says, "I say that ye are gods," and Pastor and I were discussing it whether go to here or to John, where Jesus makes that statement as well. But let me read these verses for you. It said, God takes his stand in his own congregation. He judges in the midst of the rulers. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Selah. Vindicate the weak and faithless. Do justice to the afflicted and destitute. Rescue the weak and needy. Deliver them out of the hands of the wicked. They do not know, nor do they understand. They walk about in darkness. All of the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods, and all of you are sons of the Most High. Nevertheless, you will die like men and fall like any of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for it is you who possesses all the nations. That is a very empowering statement. It reads to me anyway a little bit different in the Message Bible. Oh, it says God calls the judges into his courtroom. He puts all the judges in the dock. Enough. You've corrupted justice long enough. You've let the wicked get away with murder. You're here to defend the defenseless, to make sure the underdogs get a fair break. Your job is to stand up for the powerless and prosecute all those who exploit them. Ignorant judges, head in the sand judges. They haven't a clue to what is going on, and now everything is falling apart. The world's coming unglued. I appointed you judges, each one of you, deputies of the high God, but you've betrayed your commission, and now you're stripped of your ranks, busted. Oh God, give them what they've got coming. You've got the whole world in your hands. So that the part that sticks out to me is just the empowering part and the details of it. And it sounds a little aggressive, I guess. But look,
I'm sorry, Ron, go right ahead.
go ahead, because
No.
I'm trying to get to a question here. What is it that empowers us? What is it that activates us if we are Elohim? How do we see this based on what you read there?
I'll let someone else go first.
This is Sheldon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir.
My thinking of the question from the very beginning, when you started, it seems to be a small disconnect. When we say that we are the people, or we are responsible for what actually happened, or I see it as we are responsible for creating conditions that made this happen, which then allows for what we have desired for most to actually take place. And that is for the hearts of these people to change and for them to actually grow and become more of adults. Whereas, I think we may have been looking at it, or when we say we have the desire for something, and however the Creator sees fit that it actually takes place, it means that we have a desire, we put it out there, and the Creator is orchestrating to bring that particular thing to pass. So for example, it's not good enough, or it's not an ultimate goal just to have had Kamala as president. Our ultimate goal beyond that, of course, we see and we acknowledge that femininity, especially Black femininity, is to more so lead us, but in the exact way that actually happens, we don't know. Now, what is important for us, though, is to acknowledge and see that, and in a sense, empower that, and maybe, for lack of better words, be a servant or be there to help see that through and to actually take place. But with what actually happened, just told us is, hey, there's more work that needs to be done. This is our desire. We have faith that ultimately, like I said, the number one desire for the hearts and the minds, but more importantly, the hearts of these individuals actually change and they actually grow. So that is how we're orchestrating that. That is how we're being created. That is how we are taking part in these times. And I apologize for the background noises.
No, that's okay. No, thank you. That's a good start. You said a lot there.
Good afternoon. This is Barbara. I'd like to build on what Sheldon said.
Okay.
We have to be careful. We're going to see some things, and some of it we may expect and may not expect. But there may be some changes in hearts and minds, and we've got to be careful that we don't do like Jonah, the story of Jonah, where when the people's hearts and minds were changed, they got angry about it, and
Yeah.
we can't do that when we see changes. That should cause us to be joyful, particularly if it's someone that we didn't think would ever change. So just a reminder about that.
Yeah.
Ooh, and one other quick thing that I was thinking about, about this away from our actual discussion. I'm not sure if it was said because I haven't been on all of the lessons, but I do think a big portion of the disappointment, and I'm saying it just in case it was not mentioned, it wasn't so much of the result and who, quote unquote, won. It goes beyond that. It's to all of a sudden find out, like kind of like a check-in or a checkpoint. This is where this great deal of people's hearts were actually at. That is the part that was more so disappointing, and kind of, it hurt to find out that this is where they were, and it's just more so like, okay, it's not an alarm, but we've been notified or sent that, hey, there is definitely work that we have to do. We still have to do what we do in this way to help these individuals who we actually love and care about. But to find out that they're not as far as we had wanted, that in itself is very disappointing. I'm finished.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
To answer what Sheldon and Barbara said, especially being attuned with what Barbara said about Jonah being upset because the destruction didn't come. People changed. The Message Bible, that word that was translated as judges is Elohim. So that translation of that word was changed to make it humans as opposed to God. This is how I have seen how I see Ranger's question rather differently than I tried to explain it yesterday. I'm hoping that is more clearer than was yesterday. When we talk about we are God, we are Elohim, and the one who created us all is Ein Sof. And the universe came into existence because of Ein Sof, and Elohim comes as a result of the spiritual universe. This is how I see it. The universe is a power source, just like a substation for electricity is a power source. And these bodies of ours are the house of Elohim. And when we are seeking truth, when we are seeking righteousness, when we are functioning as we were created to function, we are receiving power from the power plant or from the substation, from the universe. And that power propels us or moves us into spiritual action and not necessarily physical action. So what happened with Kamala Harris, I can say about me, I felt very strongly that she was going to be elected through votes. And when it did not happen, I went back to the power source after, of course, wallowing in my getting caught up in me. I went back to the power source and received direction from the power source. And that direction was an understanding of what I, God, I, Elohim, must do in the earth. And that is to recognize that she did not win with votes. And she was never going to win with votes because the she is the cosmic mother, the cosmic feminine energy. And the instructions were that the cosmic energy did what it was supposed to do, and that it formed a coalition of people from all walks of life. And that coalition was like a strainer. Everything that was antithetical to humanity was strained out, and that straining left intact the coalition of Donald Trump, or the faction of the MAGA movement, whatever. So the job was done in a spiritual way, even though it was not done as we had desired it to be done. So the shock that we had, I do believe, was allowed to be the way that the shock was allowed to be without showing us what was happening, is because we needed to revisit some things within us. And one of the things we need to revisit is, do we understand what it means to be Elohim in relationship to the universe? Also, do we have too much dependence on the outcome of what we see, as opposed to relying on what we see with the eye instead of the eyes? Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Any questions about that or comments? In particular, Barbara Jean and Sheldon, since she spoke in that direction, on this. Does that
I think
coincide?
that's spot on. I think it's spot on. The issue is seeing with the eye and not the eyes. Because if you see with the eye, everything is as it should be. It doesn't mean that it feels good or that we like it necessarily at this point, but it is as it should be. And if we rest in that, if we center ourselves in that, then we continue to be open to more messages and more voices that the universe sends to us about what is and what is to come.
Thank you. I was beating myself up
concur.
because, Sheldon, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I concur fully with everything that has been said. You were beating yourself up?
Yeah, I was beating myself up because I was telling myself, I missed it. I missed it. That's all was going through I missed it. And that was necessary so that I could see how my subconscious dependence on political outcomes was still deep-seated in me. I didn't miss it. None of us missed it. It was the power source allowing us to go through this that would sharpen our spiritual ears so we could hear, as opposed to seeing with our eyes. We could see with our eye and hear with our spiritual ears. And as a result of that, it makes us keener in terms of hearing as opposed to seeing with our eyes and responding to that. Again, I want to reiterate that I see Elohim, us, as the spiritual essence of Elohim. That's who we are. The universe is the source of power that was brought into existence by Ein Sof. That is the creator of everything that is, the light of all lights, brought into existence the universe as a power source, and the spirituality that was allowed to occupy these bodies in the earth draws from that power source. And at the same time, we have opportunity, if we choose to look at what's going on in our environment and make decisions about it. I think that's what I did anyway. I can't speak for anyone else. And I'm glad that it happened that way, because it will make me more tuned to what's happening. And I do not think I'll go off the rails again as I did when I was disappointed, angry, and all the other stuff.
Can I think I see this now based on what you guys have said. Because the thing that is always I've questioned, and we talked about 82 on a few occasions, but I think I see it now. It has always bothered me that he talks about the things you didn't do, the injustices that you did. And I think I see what it's talking about. As Barb talked about seeing through that eye, as opposed to your eyes, and you said the universe being the source of the energy. If you don't look through that eye, you're not plugged in. You're not using the source the way it was designed to be used. And when you do that, you're allowing the judgments of men in the earth to run rapid and take over. One of the examples that I thought was that stood out to me a couple of weeks ago or last week, whenever it was, is when we were talking about the pigs that went in the spirit. I had never seen that before. I never understood that before. But that touched me in a place that, it resonated, and I could see it. And I've been using that internally since we discussed it. So that to me is our making judgments. It's making sure that we're intuitive and we're refining who we are. And that is what energizes the universe. As you say, not only are we getting energy from the universe, but we're also putting energy in the universe. Am I close to what you were trying to say? I know I say it in my own words, but
Yes, you are. We are, again, we are the recipients of the energy, of the power. That's it. When we have events like that, it pushes us to dig deeper, to not only see, but to also experience who we know that we are. I noticed that as far as my interaction with people was, I noticed that even though the females were disappointed, their disappointment did not take them to that space where most of the males went. And it didn't take them long to regain their sight, for lack of a better term. So I'm also saying that we have a golden opportunity to be as the Kemetic priesthood was. The thing that I want to say later on, I'm going to say it now. We must remember who we are, meaning that we remember the source as well. We must also remember that we are not a church. This is not a church in the classical sense of a church. This is not a church. And I want to say it again, this is not a church. This has absolutely nothing to do with Christianity. And I do believe that a part of my dilemma was the depth of my attachment to church/Christianity. And there's still purging that has to take place, or transformation that has to take place. If we are not the church, and we're not, if we're not Christians and we're not, then who are we? Did you feel that when I say we're not Christians? That's something that we get a twinge about sometimes. So we are not a church. We are not Christians. We are a gathering of the priesthood that's searching for truth. We are a gathering of priests who are searching for truth. Does that make sense to you so far?
Yes.
Yes.
Meaning males and females?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is no distinction between priesthood. I'm sorry, between genders when it comes to priesthood. It's impossible for there to be a priesthood that does not have feminine energy.
I just wanted to clarify that so
kind of figured.
people don't get confused.
Right. Thank you. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
You used the word priesthood, and my physical being went instantly to thinking of priest as something that's connected with the church. I agree we're not a church, but could you define priesthood maybe in the sense that you're using it, that we should be using it or
Sure.
seeing it as?
When I say priest, I'm talking about those who have committed themselves to searching for truth and becoming that truth that they're searching for, and teaching others so that they too can see that they are priests as well. There has to be a gathering of priests if others are to be taught to be priests. When Ron talked about the training in Kemet starting at 2 years old, he talked about how they were taught mathematics, science, etc. More importantly, as they were taught mathematics, science, etc., they were being taught about the universe. They were being taught about the world around them. They were also being taught that they have unlimited influence on the world around them when they are in rhythm with the universe. Does that make sense so far, Camille?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. And keep in mind that if Stephen had not acquiesced to what Telemi wanted, there would be no religion in the earth. He made the decision. Because keep in mind also that there was no religion in the earth before Stephen did that. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
So the African did that. So what is this priesthood? We are we are a storehouse of wisdom. That is not to say that you or the people are not. But if you are a storehouse of wisdom and you don't recognize who you are, it doesn't do you any good. It's like having a house and not having a key to it. So those of us who have committed ourselves years ago to do this, to travel this journey, are the key that helps everyone draw from the storehouse of wisdom or live in the storehouse of wisdom, however you choose to do it or be it. So in order for us to be the priest that we are, our desire must be strengthened. And what I mean by that is desire is strengthened when you can identify the impediments to what you desire. If you can identify the impediments, then you are able to overcome, remove, those or transform those impediments into strength, into stepping stones. If we don't recognize the impediments, then we are struggling against a force that's unrecognizable to us, or one that we have not desired to see. An example of that with me is that force, that impediment to me being the priest that I desire to be, the impediment to me having the Kemetic mindset that I desire so much was my deep-seated affinity for the political understanding of things. And I have to make sure that I stay in contact with, not in contact because I'm never out of contact, but I recognize and be aware constantly, not only of the spiritual essence of my being, but also be constantly aware of the energy source that is constantly feeding me, and not allow my mind to betray, my mind to cause me to betray myself. Always seeking to hear from the source instead of pulling from what's in my mind. What's in my mind are things that I was indoctrinated with. What's in my soul are the things that I was created with. Can you see the difference? Or is there a difference to you?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Pastor, this is GC from Philly. My thoughts, in terms of what you're saying is that the essence of a Kabbalah and what, we are drawing from the ancestors is not so much in terms of our mind, but our heart, soul, in terms of us having a better understanding of your source of substance. So I guess that's my question. Your energy or your desire, is that coming from the essence of, or the spirit of Kabbalah?
Yes, my desires are, my desire is for us to have the mindset of a Kemetan priest. Why? Because the Kemetan priest was always in rhythm with the universe. And that's the desire, to be in rhythm with the universe on a constant, continuous basis. Does that help, George? Or that's the response to your question?
Yeah, no, that helps.
Okay.
Yes.
So
So
go ahead,
what
Bob.
I hear you saying also is that the way it speaks to me is that we don't need that veil any longer that separates us from who we are and the energy source of who we are. The veil is all those things that indoctrinated us in our minds, all that baggage that we learned through our minds. We don't need that veil anymore. That veil has been ripped, and what we have direct access to is that which we were born with from the start, before all of that stuff started being layered on top of our minds and in our consciousness, material consciousness, in a sense. So that's how I see it, that the veil has been ripped, and I no longer have to see and know who I am through a veil of what other people or other situations or other circumstances have told me that I am. I know that I know from the depths of my soul who I am, because I am in direct contact with that energy source that from the universe.
Right. Yes.
Is the way I see it.
Yes. I'll tell you something else we must do. We've talked about quite frequently the schizophrenia that Africans have brought with, that we have brought with us from slavery through the years, the trauma of it all. We must heal ourselves from that trauma. That trauma does not belong to us. That trauma is a memory in our minds, not a reality in our souls. And we must look at that thing that we call trauma as a catalyst that propelled us to search for more, knowing that we are more, knowing that there's more to our existence than what we had experienced in this environment. How do you heal the trauma? The same way you healed yourself from Christianity. I am spirit. By me being spirit, I have a question for you. How can you traumatize spirit? That's not rhetorical. Or shall I say, is it possible for spirit to be traumatized? Yes or no?
Yes.
No. Anybody else before I respond to that?
I would say no, but you can probably block an awareness of things.
Yeah, if it's truly spirit, the spirit itself cannot be traumatized. It is the stuff that we pull from the mind, or something that we keep there, that we won't let go of, that blocks it. But the spirit itself is pure. it's truth. It's it's undefiled. And it's all the stuff that we allow that begins to separate us from the essence of who we truly are.
Yes.
And I would also concur, let's say that the spirit is not traumatized, it is the mind. And I think that there's a scripture that says that the spirit itself beareth witness with our spirit that we are the children of God. And if the children of God and God is spirit, then again, I would say, concur that the spirit is not traumatized, it is the mind and what we think. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
This is
Someone-
I
Ramel.
have a question about that.
Sure.
Sorry, this is Rania. I was curious about what the devil, as we used to call it, evil is that a spirit too? Because if we're talking about, are we talking about spirit is the same, or are there different spirits? So when we're pulling on things, we can pull from a spirit that is not traumatized, but in its own way not balanced, or do you see what I'm asking there?
I do.
So we know there's,
I do see what you're asking. Wait, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I know that there's evil. Well, we're not all on the same page, right? So we're pulling from different sources. Or you would think so if the spirit is not traumatized. So that was why I was trying to understand that.
The sources that we are pulling from are the energy sources in the environment that we live in. When we talk about the tree of knowledge, good and evil, tree of life, when we talk about that stuff, we're talking about energy forces. And when we talk about earth consciousness, we're talking about energy sources. And if we allow ourselves to live and be guided by earth consciousness, then we are not clear on who we are as being spirit itself. We are not clear on that because having earth consciousness gives us a propensity to attach ourselves to those things that has its origin within the environment of the earth, i.e. religion. Does that make sense, Rainy?
Yeah, so is the energy then different from spirit? I guess I'm just trying to understand what
Gotcha.
spirit is in this context.
It is a energy that needs to be repurposed. When the scripture talked about, Paul wrote about renewing your mind, when we talk about renewing your mind, when we talk about that word being metamorphosis, well, what is a metamorphosis? The energy, our earth consciousness is so different than spiritual awareness until it has to be a metamorphosis that takes place. And for those who are not necessarily attuned to what I'm talking about, the earth consciousness is just like that worm crawling on the ground that spins itself into a cocoon. The metamorphosis takes place when the butterfly escapes from the cocoon looking nothing like the worm. So the more aware we become of our spiritual essence, the less we look like, or the less we are influenced by earth consciousness. Am I making sense so far? Am I?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Okay. So if we are there, if that is the case, then what we are in the process of doing as we tread this journey, as we travel this journey in search of truth, what we are actually doing is experiencing a metamorphosis. We are becoming more clear about who we are. We are butterflies. We are not worms. Does that make sense? Sure, James. I think it does. Okay, then
Yeah,
I'll
it makes-
continue.
Sure, James, I think it does.
Okay. So what I'm saying is that the trauma is in earth consciousness. The trauma is in our minds. Trauma is what we experience when we engage with earth consciousness as opposed to spirituality. We are able to heal ourselves from this trauma if you want to, if you will do that by virtue of realizing that trauma, that's not who I am. I am a spiritual entity. That's who I am. I'm spirit. And as spirit, what was traumatized was my mindset in the earth environment. Who I really am is not traumatized. If we continue to embrace the sayings that we are traumatized, that we are schizophrenic in order for us to function in the earth, then we are embracing earth consciousness and earth principles that are not applicable to being a spiritual entity. Questions or comments? Does that make sense, somebody?
It does make sense, and
Yes.
if we
Yeah.
Thank you.
if we continue in that vein, then we never recognize that what it means to be Elohim. We never get there.
Right. And I'm saying that a part of what we have experienced during the course of the week is a message that has led us on a journey to do an introspection of ourselves. And that introspection has brought us to a place where we are embracing who we are. And when I say embracing who we are, suppose for a moment that there is, Ein Sof, the light of all lights, right? Then there is the universe. And that universe is the vibration, is the rhythm of the light of all lights. And from that universe, from that vibration came humans. Humans who are no different than the universe, with the exception of being in a body and having to clear the thoughts from our heads that we embrace in this realm. The energy in this realm gives us opportunity to be spiritual or earthly. That's the choice. One of the two. And if we choose to be spiritual, then that means we are in rhythm with the universe. And we cannot remain in rhythm with the universe if we are also making an effort to embrace the traumatic experiences that this universe has forced upon us. Does that make sense? Because it vibrates at a different frequency. Trauma has a different rhythm than does the universe. Can you see that? Come on, guys. Talk to me.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
Douglas Klotz puts it as realizing and being these are my words, but being intimate with that community that is in you, those voices, you have to corral them, rather, not in a forceful or violent way, but in a sense that you recognize that they come from a place that is not the higher self, and uh, they're there because you created them. They came from you.
And you have to tame them.
Yes.
You can speak with one voice.
So would you characterize trauma as more of more chaotic or discordant?
Yes.
Okay, so that's why that's why I feel the way I feel, because of the chaos, and it doesn't sit well with me.
Yes.
Okay. All
When
right.
we look at, when we read about a lynching, when we read about a police killing, or we see it on the screen on the TV, we relive trauma that is in our earthly DNA. That's why we get upset. We have to get to a place where we understand that this comes from everything that's traumatic, comes from a traumatic mind, a mind and not a soul. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
our minds houses the trauma. As Barbara said, we keep remembering what happened. If we are able to look at it and not be traumatized by it, because we are a priest and we know that this type of trouble brings humanity to a place where it gets tired of being tired and seeks something better, something different. So enters the desire to have a comedic mindset, enters the desire for truth. And that desire for truth becomes the rhythm that fills the void when people are looking for something better. When people are looking for something better, they are seeking to be emptied of what they have been experiencing and replace it with something better. And that something better is the rhythm of the universe. Truth is the rhythm of the universe. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
right,
Yes.
thank you. So right now, we are at a place or in a space that has been reserved for us. And how long we stay in this place that has been reserved for us is dependent upon how long we remain in a state of trauma.
Hey, Pastor, this is Charles.
Mm-hmm.
Help me with this here. Why did, when the man asked Jesus, give us understanding of the spiritual things, and he told the man, I can't because you don't understand the earthly thing yet.
Yes.
So to see that in this.
Okay. That's exactly what I'm talking about. The reason it is so difficult for people to understand spiritual things is because they have been indoctrinated with a mindset of religion, with a mindset of greed, with a mindset of desires to be superior to everyone. Those are earthly things, thoughts. So if you have a mindset to be a billionaire, to be greedy, to own as much as you can and have all the money that you can muster. If that's your guidance, then how in the world can you embrace love and kindness? How can you embrace forgiveness? How can you embrace a desire for mankind to be taken care of? When you are so selfish, you are looking for things yourself. I cannot help you understand spiritual things if you can't understand earthly things. If you can't understand that trauma is an earthly event, then it is difficult for you to embrace the God that you are. It's difficult for you to embrace the spiritual essence of your being, the spiritual power that's at your fingertips, the rhythm that you are in with the universe. It's hard for you to embrace that if you're looking for Jesus. Does that help?
It helped a little.
Okay, I'm gonna keep talking. I hope to help you a lot in a minute. So what I'm saying in essence is we must change not only the way we speak, we must change the way we process. When we look at something that's an affront to us, i.e. lynches, etc., the way we look at them determines where we are in terms of embracing the spiritual nature of our being. I'm not saying that should not be empathy. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But when you began to rail against the people who did this, that's different than having empathy for the one who got lynched and the family around them and the friends. That's different.
I think
They don't know what they're doing.
I think, to me, and I agree with everything you said. I can feel that. One of the things it's not always that you rail against them. It's just, I think it's something different about us as a people, and we feel an attachment. So it's a deep hurt too. And I don't know what to do about that attachment, because there's certain things that only happens to Africans. You see? So it's good we're talking about this, and because I do see it, and this is teaching or showing us how to be Elohim, make that complete. But that being attached to the things that you see, you actually feel them.
That's because you're not attached to it. You are it. Yes, you feel it. Absolutely, you feel it. But where does your mind go when you feel it? I'm so tired of this stuff. That someday we are going to be at a place where we don't have to deal with this anymore. How long is it going to be before God does something about this? That's different than feeling it. How do you respond when you feel it? Can you see what the point I'm making?
Yes.
How do you respond? You have to feel it. If you did not experience it, you would not be one with humanity. Are you with me? And it doesn't matter whether it's someone in South Carolina or South Africa, you feel it, you experience it, it's painful. But what do you do with the pain? Do you allow it to traumatize you? Do you play it over and over in your mind because that's the trauma? Are you doing that? Or are you saying that because I am Elohim, I can change this? Yet, there are times when you say, if I am Elohim, how come I have not changed it? Because you have not, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about us, have not totally embraced the reality that you're Elohim. Because when you know who you are, you don't doubt it anymore. You don't challenge it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So what you're saying is that not only do we change the way we speak, as you said, but the way we process it. And what you're talking about right now is the processing of it. That, yeah, I know this hurts, but also I know the reason it hurts. And so I don't have to stay there anymore. I can say, I understand from my earth consciousness why I hurt, but that's not who I am. The process is moving beyond the hurt and embracing, okay, and it doesn't mean I don't have to feel it. I can feel it, but what I do with it once I feel it? Do I stay there, or do I say, okay, yeah, that hurt, but that's not who I am? And that's part of the process. The process is understanding and acknowledging that you are bigger than the hurt you feel, the trauma you feel. You are spirit. The trauma is based in the physical and it's based in the mind. And once you know, okay, that's where it's based, then like those voices inside of you, you can corral that and say, okay, I'm putting that away. I'm rejecting that. Now I've felt it, I've acknowledged it, and now I understand it, but that's not who I am. And so I choose to move on and to respond instead of reacting in terms of the way I hurt. I respond from my spiritual essence, the knowledge of who I am.
And the best way to do that, to move on, instead of saying, Father, Ron, or say James, or whatever your name is, forgive them because they are unaware of what they are doing. They don't know who they are. Forgiveness frees you and them. Can you see that?
Yes.
So when you experience that, you see it. Yes, you're hurt. But if the response is, I'm forgiving them because they don't know who they are. If they did, they wouldn't do this. You know? It makes a difference than holding on to that pain or the anger. And that's one of the ways that we are able to separate ourselves from traumatic thoughts that have kept us in bondage and frees us to function as Elohim on a daily, continuous basis. Make sense?
Hey, Ray.
Wait a minute, 1 second, Charles.
Now,
Wait 1 second, please.
all right.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Go ahead, Charles.
You remember when Moses went to God and he told and his Israelites was wanting water, and he went to God telling them that they want water, and God told him to go smite the rock.
Yeah.
And he went there, I guess, because people was all array about the water, so he hit the rock, and water came out still. But he didn't obey what God had told him to do. So how that deal with this situation?
He did that out of anger.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm saying that when you have experiences like that, you cannot react to them with anger. You respond to them with forgiveness. And in that situation with Moses and the rock, it speaks to something else that I'm not talking about right now. However, I can see what you're driving, what you're searching for, rather, when you raise that question. Is anger involved there? And that's why things did not turn out exactly the way they were supposed to. It was anger involved when we talked about the lynching that took place in Henderson, North Carolina. It was, yes, it was pain, but it was anger, disappointment, and a whole lot of other things. However, the order of the day is always forgiveness. You cannot have mercy for anyone if you can't forgive. Do I believe that the shenanigans took place in this election? Yes, I do. But it's okay. All who did it, as far as I'm concerned, they're forgiven. Because what they have done is exactly what the universe intended. I can see in my heart what's happening. I can see the difference between that Kamala coalition and that MAGA coalition. I can see that. I can see with my eye a road, space, a gap between those. I can see that. And I can see that it is impossible for those two to merge. It will not happen. Transformation must take place first. And when transformation takes place, it's not emergence. It's a sense of knowing that you are one with everyone else. Can you see that? No matter what happens, no matter what your experiences are or are not, know that you are God. It doesn't matter what anyone attempts. Doesn't matter how anyone attempts to harm you. They can't do that. You can't hurt a spirit. You can kill my body, but you can't kill me. I can't die. I am in this body for the express purpose of being a priest in the earth, so that mankind will have an opportunity to know that it can journey towards people. I'm sorry, it can take the journey of a priest out also. You are a priest. We are the priesthood. We are the priests. If the priests don't get it right, how can the priest expect anyone else to do it?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm hearing you talk about the trauma, and we can move beyond it. But I think it's important for people to realize that when you were saying we're not Christians,
Yeah.
and people were feeling some kind of way about that. But it's important for us to really realize that the church and Christianity has been a source of a lot of our trauma.
All of them.
Yeah. Yeah, just the way we've been treated through the church and being part of quote unquote Christianity. You know, they told us we were slaves. The Christians came out on Sunday and lynched us. How do we reconcile that? You know, so it caused a lot of trauma. So can you be in the church and get rid of your trauma and still get rid of your trauma?
No,
That's my question.
no, ma'am. Because that trauma is reinforced every Sunday.
Yeah.
Every time
Every-
we come together.
Every
it's-
single day, every time you hear a so-called Christian talk about whatever.
Right, it's reinforced.
Yeah.
And it is reinforced with gospel songs. Everything that's in the realm of Christianity reinforces it.
Yeah. Especially don't sin, but you can't be Jesus. You know, it's crazy.
But Jesus is your brother.
Right.
But you can't be Jesus.
Okay, thanks.
There are so many diametrics that leads to a confusion. It's not even funny. So we are the storehouse of wisdom. Become aware of that. And when you become aware of that, when you embrace that truly, then you will see that wisdom is not bondage, it's freedom. This journey is not bondage, it's freedom. I can't tell you how free I felt the first time I realized that I did not belong in that arena of Christianity. The first time I realized that I didn't have to be praying in the morning, at night, etc. I didn't have to be going to programs at church in order to be accepted. I didn't have to do all these churchy things. The freedom that I experienced, and I didn't know it at the time, but I was beginning to experience that freedom with this first church I pastored. When I said that I will not be back for programs because I'm going to spend time with the family. I'm not coming back for choir anniversaries, because choir anniversaries, all you're doing is exchanging money. That was my soul crying out to be free. And I didn't know that. When we ended all of the programs and the auxiliaries in the church, that was a cry for freedom. And that was a step towards this journey of freedom. So the church itself is traumatized. I guarantee you that all the church has to offer to those who are upset about what happened last week in terms of the election, just talk to God about it, pray about it. God will handle it. Well, you said that about the election. You prayed for her to be elected. So let's talk about this thing. What happened? It had to be a power greater than us that allowed it to be. And we cannot be one with that power greater than us as long as we are influenced or have a propensity to follow the guidelines of this earth consciousness. It's difficult enough to live in the midst of it, but it's even more difficult to refrain from being influenced by it. It's hard to shed that influence, to push it away. It's hard to do that. We have to continuously remind ourselves who we are until we get to a place where we don't have to say it, we are it. It's hard. And the reason it's hard is because it does not come easy until you do it. Everything that you can do was hard before you did it. But now it's easy. So, in order to ready ourselves for what is to be manifested, we must have no doubt about who we are and the source of our power. Any questions or comments?
I got one, Pastor,
Okay.
and it's going to be in the Bible, and you probably tell me shut up, Chuck.
I've never
you,
told
you,
you,
you know,
I wouldn't do that.
you remember when David messed with the woman, and he got her pregnant,
Yeah.
and then God told him that his child is going to die. Then
Yeah.
he went to praying and everything, throwing sackcloth over and this and that. He was trying to change the heart or the mind of God
Yeah.
because he was the apple of God's eye.
Yeah.
But what God had said happened. And then he got up from there and said, okay, like nothing didn't happen.
Yep.
And so that's what put us in the position that we got pissed off and stuff about it. But if God had this in mind, we couldn't change it.
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing about that, Charles. What happened with David? David covered himself in sackcloth and ashes. And when they
Yep.
told him that their boy was dead, David got up and washed himself and readied himself to eat. And they asked David, why was he not mourning? And David said that it's over. Well, I don't have a reason to mourn anymore. All it was saying was this: his life has left this body. It's out of the body now. I don't have a reason to be in mourning to try to keep him in this body. I know where he is. His spirit has separated from that body. That's all.
So
But
he-
yes, do we mourn? Of course we do.
So he didn't have a reason to be traumatized?
Right. I like that. Because that was trauma to him when that boy died.
The lead up to it, yeah.
Yeah. So sackcloth and ashes now. But and I'm sure there are any number of instances like that we are familiar with. I tell you another one that most of us are familiar with, not all of us. Someone close to you is suffering. And you are in pain because they are suffering. And they transition out of their body. And you begin to cry. You're not crying for them to come back to the body. You're crying because you missed the physical presence. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're crying, because you missed the physical presence. And let me give you an example. Your uncle lives in New York or Massachusetts, wherever. And you only see your uncle every couple of years. Maybe every 4 years or 5, whatever. And your uncle dies. And it hurts you. Well, you were not seeing him anyway. So why does it hurt you? Because you know that that presence is not there anymore. It's the presence that we long for. We are not crying. We are not longing for that person to enter that body that's suffering.
I think too, sometimes we don't realize the level of attachment, you know, that sort of like this is something missing now that you will never get back.
And that thought pattern right there, that you'll never get back, is church. Because they are an ancestor. If they were not an ancestor, how do you have visitation? How do you experience their presence even after they exited their body? They never left you, they left the body. Can you see that? They left the body. No one can convince me that my grandma, my mama, my aunts that left me, they never left me when I was in this earth with them. So why would I believe they left me now? And my ancestors never left me. I left them in terms of my thoughts because of Christianity. Now that I'm sane again, now that I have clarity of thought again, now that I am present to the spiritual essence of my being, I see that they never left me. They simply left that body. And the more we embrace that in totality, the more we become one with the rhythm of the universe in knowing who we are and functioning as such. Questions or comments? If not, I'm done. Go ahead.
I have one, Pastor.
Go ahead, babe.
So I want to go back to the forgiveness, but
Uh-huh.
also the freedom you talked about, right? Being
Mhm.
free. And I guess, and maybe it's because of how I think of forgiveness in the church's mentality, right? You forgive someone, no love lost, you treat them like it's all good. And that's what we're taught. So maybe could you talk a bit more about what forgiveness really means? Because I think when I think of it, I think I'm supposed to just now, because we talk about we got to bridge the gap, right? We got to listen to the other side, whatever, right? You know, and that's where I find it hard is how do I open myself up to listen to that when to me it's not freeing to listen to it? You know, if that's part of forgiveness. Does that make sense, my question?
What do you mean by listening to it, babe?
Well, what I keep hearing too, because I think of forgiveness, if we talk about political, right? Because that's where my head is.
Okay, I got you.
You know,
Yeah.
forgiving that so many people could vote in a way of life that is so hard for so many others, right? That's so hateful, that's so whatever. And I keep hearing, well, you got to listen to people. We got to bridge the gap by listening, right? Which to me goes back to the forgiveness, like forgiving your abuser, right? But it feels like they're saying forgive your abuser and go back and sit with them and have dinner with them. And, you know, which to me that's what forgiveness was always taught in church. And to me, that does not feel freeing. You know, it doesn't feel as if I'm walking in freedom if that's forgiveness. Does that make sense?
It does. So my question is, when you forgive someone, when you're in their presence, or when their name is brought up, or when the event, the infraction is brought to your attention, how do you feel? If you feel the trauma all over again, then you've not freed yourself through forgiveness.
So can you explain that a bit more than that forgiveness aspect? Because I think that's where, for me, I'm having a hard time with in what you've talked about. Is how does that forgiveness look? And walking in the freedom of being fully who I am without being encumbered. by ideas that I know don't serve me or anyone, frankly.
Can I add something to this and say a few things? This is Sheldon.
Sure.
So let's first start off with what you said was taught in terms of forgiveness and in the church traditionally. Forgiveness is only meant that you go along with or you do as someone says you do because you've told outwardly this is the right thing to do. The part that you're stuck on is actually not that way that you just said you're stuck on is actually not forgiveness. Forgiveness does not at all mean that you agree with the people. It doesn't mean that you have to entertain and sitting down and having a conversation about certain things either. It simply means what Pastor Richard just talked about in terms of how you feel on the inside. And part of what that forgiveness looks like is that you have determined that, okay, these people, and I'm just going to name some things to give an example, they're not the scum of the earth. They are worthy of love. They absolutely have made mistakes and are misguided, and they don't understand and know who they are. But in the same way, you accept them. And I think this is probably a good analogy. Your kids have done things before that you did not like, and it upsetted you, but you did not see them as less than, and you actually forgave them. That doesn't mean at all that you agreed what they did. You could even told them that, hey, you don't do this, and correct them in that particular thing. But you didn't think they were less of individuals. You did not wish harm on them. It isn't to the point in terms of your attitude towards them was that I couldn't care less. So even in the idea when you think about forgiveness as it relates to one's abuser, that does not mean that that person has to continue to communicate with that abuser, be in their presence, or have anything to do with them whatsoever. It just means that, hey, it is just an example, is best that we do not, communicate at all, but I still want the best for that individual, and I see, godliness in them, even though they may not see it in themselves. And I want the best for them, and I care. But like I said, care doesn't mean that there has to be any type of interaction whatsoever. It can actually be very, very far away. But the forgiveness that Pastor Richard is talking about is in our hearts. That's why I was asking the question, how do you feel? That's what determines forgiveness. But again, that's not at all what we were taught in church. And to be frank, I think that a lot of the people who were teaching us of what forgiveness was didn't even really truly understand what forgiveness was because they had never done that work themselves. It was more so just passing something on. And the only way that you can truly speak about forgiveness is if it had to go through the act of doing it yourself to the point where you truly know it. I'm finished at the moment.
I hear you, Shel. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Forgiveness is a decision. And the decision is, do I want to free myself and my thoughts from what I'm thinking about this person, or do I want to hold on to them? That's what it is. And you make the decision. That's what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is letting go and freeing you, and thereby freeing that other person. If you don't free them, then whenever you think about them, whenever you come in contact, you will always feel that little burdensome, whatever it is that weighs you down. So you make the decision, is that what I want to continue to happen to me? I want to continue to hold something against them. And that word hold means, do I want to carry that with me? Do I want to keep that? Do I want to keep that trauma? Or do I want to just let it go and not be concerned or worried about it anymore? Because when you free yourself, it frees the other person too. And when you free the other person, you free you.
So let me ask then the follow-up to that. It was something we talked about. I can't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, but it was the pastor you're talking about walking through this with our children. You know, I'm not phrasing it right, but you kind of had this thing of us to bring about restoration. And I'm using a different word, could be a wrong word. We have to walk through this with them. But that's where I am hung up, I think, over this idea that I can forgive them and not engage or not feel like I've got to carry them, because that's what walking through this with them feels like to me. Does that make sense? And how can I be free?
You don't have to carry them.
If I'm
You don't have to carry them. You're carrying them when you don't forgive. That's a burden, unforgiveness.
So when you talked about walking through them with this, what does that mean then? What is that?
I'm trying
What
to
is
remember what that was in reference to.
it was the, I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly, but it was when we were talking about how the white consciousness is like the child that has gone off, right? And we have to walk through it with them to bring, you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
I know that. Yeah, they are our children, and we have to bring restoration to them. This is more. Matter of fact, this is after forgiveness, because if you can't forgive, you can't restore. So when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the transformation from a European mindset to that of an African mindset. I'm talking about a mindset of Kabbalah, a mindset of loving kindness, of righteousness, a mindset of yes, I am my brother's keeper, a mindset of if I have one slice of bread and my brother's hungry, I have a half a slice of bread, that kind of thing. The European mindset is I have mine, you got to get yours. So when I'm talking about that transformation from the mindset, it has more to do with the thoughts as opposed to the actual skin tone. I'm talking about we were transformed from a mindset of what the church had instilled in us, or Christianity, I should say, had instilled in us, because the church instilled in us, they were good. It helped us in life and still is. But the Christianity instilled in us was bondage, and we have to we walk through that. We help each other get through that bondage by talking about it, and in order for us to help our children get through that bondage, they have to desire it. So how are we doing it now? We're not doing it by holding their hand and walking them through it physically. We are doing it by putting in the macro righteousness, the energy of loving kindness, the energy of yes, I'm my brother's keeper type thing, the energy of forgiveness and mercy. And that energy that we put into the macro, people who are searching for something better, who are tired of the hate, who are tired of the racism, who are tired of all of this mess, these people have something to grasp. And the reason that it was a coalition that Common was able to pull together in such a short period of time is because of what was in the macro. People were looking for something better. The MAGA movement represents the worst of the worst worldwide. And what we had put in the macro is a love for humanity. And that in itself was a magnet to bring people together who were looking for a change. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. So what you're saying is the language that we're using and that we hear on television is not spiritual, is reach across the aisle, right? It's try to sit and understand and find common. You're saying that's not it.
No, that's not it.
Okay, to living and being spiritual,
It's different.
and our own actions being that, and allowing that to make the change, not me having to go sit and talk to somebody about why they're racist or whatever.
Right. Now, if it presents
Something
itself,
you said.
someone was
Go
saying,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, James. I mean, Sheldon.
That's my middle name. I would say in that particular situation, no, that's not forgiveness. That is them asking and saying that you should come and basically take on the same ideals that I possess. We're basically saying what I've been saying and what I believe is the correct thing. And we're not all at saying that. The one other thing when I was thinking about when you asked the question, and I'm not saying this directly this to you right here, but just saying it in general, as an aspect of forgiveness, it does require, and you call it requires engagement in another form within. Because that particular thing that upsets you that you have to forgive, we have to address that within, in the sense, face that before we can get over that particular thing. A lot of times what happens and was taught in a false sense of forgiveness as relates in the church is you just say, I have forgiven so-and-so, and then you try essentially to go on with your life. But that thing is still there and has never been addressed, and no forgiveness is actually taking place. When Pastor Richard mentioned earlier, how does this thing happen? What happens inside when it comes up? And not talking about you, I'm just saying just general you, proverbial you, is like, oh, I feel upset and I feel anger all over again. Well, that's just because the only thing that you had to lean on as it relates to forgiveness, you said, oh, I forgave them, or I said I forgave them because Jesus said I needed to forgive, and I just kept on going. So that part, there is engagement that is required. So I want to say there's a difference between them saying you have to come and break bread or discuss and all this other stuff. That's just an attempt to say this is what you should believe, and essentially this is why I'm right and you're wrong. I'm done.
It's one thing that I've experienced in dealing with people with forgiveness. Everyone that I've processed through the principle of forgiveness had told me that they had already forgiven the person. And I said, well, let me process you through. And I think I've told you this before. I know I have. And in processing them, I carry them back to the event itself. And they realize that they have not forgiven the person because it still hurts. And they still are angry about what happened. But once the processing through it is done, and they go back to that same situation, they experience nothing, no trauma at all, no pain, no anger, none of that. Forgiveness does indeed changes your rhythm. It does free you, and it does free the person even if they don't know it. It does it. So, Rainier?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I was thinking of the internal work that you talked about today, and I think I thought of it as more external,
Okay.
or something that I had to do for others, and it felt like a weight, right? Because
Right.
I'm tired of doing stuff for everybody else, right? I was tired of
No, that's
voting
not
for
it.
the world,
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that anymore.
Well, don't. Because that's not it. This is an internal thing. This is a spiritual thing. This is not a material environmental thing at all.
And again, forgiveness does not require, and I'm going to use engagement in a different way. It does not require engagement with the other party that is being forgiven. In the same way, we can forgive, and in the same way what Barbara was talking about is freeing ourselves. for those who may even have already transitioned. And it's something that we've been holding against them. But
You-
the actual engagement is not required at all with the individual.
Because you can do it after they die, like Sheldon said. You can be processed through that. And it frees you. Any other questions or comments? Ron?
So then I take it we meditate on this, but we feel more comfortable when we talk about being Elohim.
That's a good question. Do you guys feel more comfortable about being Elohim, about knowing that you're Elohim?
I do, but I have one other question. I didn't ask it earlier. What's the difference between Elohim and spirit?
Elohim is spirit. Elohim is plural. It's talked about more.
Right.
Yeah. See.
Well, that was why I went back to the Elohim being the spirit being traumatized or whatever, because some of the Elohim fell.
What happens is Elohim is spiritual. Elohim was brought into existence for the purpose of occupying physical bodies. Does that make sense so far?
So the angels, even though they were made the little lower than the angels thing, was Elohim was not angels. I think we talked about that years ago.
Yeah, we did. They are made a little lower than the message that the Creator sent to us, or the message that we are. Humans are little, have lowered themselves rather beneath the status of angel, which means that they have lowered themselves with their thoughts beneath the thoughts of the Creator. The mindset of the Creator, by virtue of us attaching ourselves mentally to earth consciousness, we have lowered ourselves beneath the consciousness of who we really are. That's spirituality. Does that make sense? Anybody can help me if you will.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. And maybe we need to talk about a little bit more that the whole purpose for Elohim coming into existence, because with Elohim being plural, that means that the plan was for Elohim to be in multiple places, meaning that Elohim was brought into existence to occupy a body. Does that make sense?
It's almost the.
Go ahead, babe.
It's almost like the part of the thing of, well, the Mormons. That's it. Mormons talk about the spirit bodies. I guess that's why I get a little wrapped around it, because when I look at that face, I don't mean to look at it. It's just I know this. They talked about the spirits having 3 different flavors, right? You had the God-like spirits, the white man. You had the demons and devils who were the dark spirits. Then you had the colored people, the black people, who were the not godlike. I mean, and so when we talk of plural, it's hard not to get that wrapped up.
And I'm saying that they're just as bad as Christians, if not worse. So that's nothing like what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about our bodies is just a bunch of fruit jars. And somebody's filling up these jars with water, which is spirit. And that's Elohim. Elohim is plural. It has never been one being. The church told us that is only one God, one Elohim. That is not true. Elohim is plural. The I am on the end of it makes it plural. You can look it up, and any place you choose is going to be plural. So the idea, the concept of the spiritual essence of Elohim was for the purpose of occupying the body. So the creator of all creators, of all creation, brought into existence, the light of all light brought into existence the essence of spirituality for the express purpose of occupying a body. And the occupying of that body grants that body that's called human the opportunity to be to be in rhythm with the universe and function in total spirituality in order to bring humanity to a place of loving kindness, a place of righteousness. And that place of righteousness is the mindset of the African. And the mindset of the European is the sustenance for bringing balance to humanity. If it were not for the resistance, then there would be no point in making any efforts to do any more than what we have always been doing. However, because of the resistance to righteousness, because of the resistance to truth, because of the resistance to loving kindness, that resistance is the sustenance that was provided for us to bring balance to the earth by virtue of transforming that resistance into harmony. Does that make sense?
So it's like in that, I can't remember which book it was, but the one where it talks about the creator making the vessel and pouring itself into the vessel and the vessel shattering because it wanted to be like the creator.
Yeah, that's one of those, sages saying from the.
I can't remember where I read it from.
I remember the book that you're talking about. Yep, that's what it is. So you got it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Anyone else?
Okay. Good job, y'all. Good discussion. Thank you. I feel better about it.
And that subsequent questions are going to come up, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And we're going to have other questions about it, and that's fine.
Okay. Well, we will take a pause right here and reconvene on Saturday and jot down your questions. And hope you have a good week. Thank you.
Thank you. Talk with you later.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.